What is up, everybody? Back to back weeks of us doing the show live. We are glad that you could take a moment out of your day to go through all things DFS and betting with us. Nick, I think we may have hacked the Win Daily stream again. So I don't know if you're like a 2-bit criminal or what's going on. I will give a shout out to Jason Mizrahi, everything that they have going on at Win Daily. It's the least that we could do on this show for us taking over the platform every single week. Also, if you aren't doing so already, sign up with the code BGP over at Underdog to take advantage of their 100% match bonus. You have drafts, the higher lower options, their fun rivals feature that places players against one another for you to choose who will be better that week. All those options are available to play the game how you want. Once again, that code is BGP to get a 100% match bonus of up to $100. If you have any questions, you can either hit Nick and I up on Twitter at TeeOffSports or SticksPicks. But Nick, there's a lot to talk about this week. Obviously, you had a very close call in the Millionaire Maker. I'll let you discuss that for a second before we get into this tournament. But a couple Bryson, and it seems to be these live golfers now that just can't quite get the job done.
Yeah, I would describe it as luck. I had 150 lineups in that contest. 149 of them did not have Scotty or Bryson. It was like my Monday morning, like, I don't know, like defense lineup. Like I knew I was going to love Fleetwood. The price was too cheap. Everybody liked Fleetwood. I think his ownership was relatively, 15% ish. So, it was just a good value play. My differentiation that was Ben on. He was in a ton of my optimizer lineups, obviously, in any hand build that I had for the most part, I believe. And then who was the other guy that was like, obviously Bryson and Scotty, I ended up fading in them. It was just pure luck because like my player pool is an absolute disaster outside of Ben on and Tommy Fleetwood. Who was he? Oh, Ludwig. Like I was extremely bullish on Ludwig, so that helped a ton. I had a ton of him, but obviously he was in any handle. Like my core play, I think, was like Ludwig and Ben on and Tommy Fleetwood. But not having Scotty anywhere else certainly did not help. I did not have the contest surrounded like I did the 22 Open. But yeah, I guess the one hand build was damn near the nuts. Bryson could not make a damn birdie. But also a lot of like good things like broke my way. I didn't have any Morikawa. I would have never played him with the recent form. So shout out to those who did. Max Homa, we were both on. So like that helped a little bit. He wasn't a core play by any means for me. But Morikawa kind of going in reverse towards the end there. Obviously the tee shot in 18 and saving bogey on that hole was very impressive. If he doubles, I think I go up to third place, which obviously is a huge difference from sixth. But if Bryson just makes one or two of those 4-footers he had on 15 15's a par 5 and then 16's a par 3, I think he put right on the gut. So yeah, that sucks, but it is what it is. It was a lot more variance this week, so I'm not like as upset about like DJ controlled my destiny, right? Like the last tee time didn't matter. We had Cameron Young, we had Cam Smith locked up and no one played DJ. So I just was at 17 at the old course as a drivable par 4.
I believe so.
Yeah, and then he drives the green and obviously 3-putt. So it's like he controlled my destiny there, whether I was going to win or have a fantastic finish as is. Sunday, I needed Bryson to keep scoring. I needed Ben on, who, made a bomb of a birdie putt on 15 from the tee box on the right side of that hole. So just a nice little flat breaker to the left, which for a righty is a pretty good putt. He buries it, so that helped a ton. I think I probably would have finished like 15th to 20th if he doesn't make that, because obviously a guy at 2 to 3% owned, getting inside the top 20 and making a birdie that late in the tournament really helps the variance of your lineup kind of move up the leaderboard. And then, Morikawa had to kind of struggle. Homa kind of had to struggle a little bit. So, there was just way too much variance in that lineup. But still, would have been sick. I think I would have got second if Bryson made both. Would have got third if he made one. Would have got third if Morikawa missed that bogey putt on 18 and double. But either way, what was pretty much a disaster for me on the DFS side turned out to be amazing with luck. So, it is what it is. And someone was pissed and they're like, "Yeah, man, you said not to play Scotty." It's like, I didn't fucking tell anybody not to do anything. Like our show last week is literally, Spencer, I have a player pool of 35. I would like to get it to 30. You ended up talking me into like 41 guys and I had to cut more. Like not once did I tell anybody to do anything. It was like a review of my pool. And I think that was kind of like our show. And I think the only, like, on the cheat sheet, the only person I said I'm actually like full fading was Hideki Matsuyama. And that one, like, I would have stood by. I think like a 9K guy at 25% ownership when Morikawa was sitting right there, we talked about him. We were both off him, but we went to Homa in that price range. Like, turns out that worked fucking great. So that's like, if someone was upset, I heard some rumors that some people were upset that, like, it's like, you said not to play Scotty. It's like, please show me where I did that. I'm just saying, like, I play like an asshole. I'm not playing Scotty because of the different lineup builds that I could get. It just turned out that Justin Thomas had to absolutely erupt, who I was very heavy on. And and again, not having Scotty is going to hurt. So, like, didn't have him, but which I'm fine with. I'll wear that one. But Justin Thomas was a big letdown for the rest of my lineups. Sorry. But yeah, other than that, it was cool to have like a random hand build that I remember making work out. But for Bryson, I think, do you think the live thing matters at all? Like, Cam Smith played really well on Sunday. Like, these guys not playing 72 holes, I don't think it really matters. But Bryson really struggled in like the competition of being in it on Sunday, in my opinion. Like, he's a very good putter and missing. And of course he probably knows the breaks. It's the same pin placements on Sunday as always. Like, I don't get why he couldn't make any of those.
I think I would make an argument when we look at Bryson that he seemed to have played his best golf on Thursday when the conditions were the softest that they were the entire week. That course started baking out, getting more difficult. And in general, if you look at some of his strokes gain metrics, I don't think they were stout across the board over the final 3 days. So the Masters is an awkward course for him because you would expect the distance and all of that he brings to the mix to really give him upside. And I think it does on the days where it plays softer, but the around the green game, some of those short iron proximities, those still have the potential to bite him. And I think it probably would have, even regardless if he would have been on the PGA Tour, like, those were issues in his statistical profile that we were having leading up to his departure. So, and just very quickly to touch on the one topic that you just mentioned, like,
it was 13, not 15. 15, I believe he kind of hooked it into the trees a little bit, like where Ludwig was, and had to punch out. So it was 13. 13 is where he got to the green area into and still couldn't make birdie. So that was like, sure, if you have to punch and get to 15 in regulation, you can't expect birdie. Making par any hole on Augusta is an accomplishment. But when he got there relatively into just off to the left on 13, it's like, dude, come on, let's make
that's the short game problem. I mean, like, yeah, that's kind of the issue that keeps rearing its head with him. But what I was going to say is we are very transparent on this show. Like, there is a big difference between we are full fading somebody because of their statistical profile to the difference of we are going to be lighter on Scotty Scheffler because of ownership and a game theory answer there. Like, nobody, at least between the two of us, and if anybody's doing it for any other reason, I would question why it's happening, but nobody's recommending to fade Scotty Scheffler based off of any reason other than game theory on it. Like, the statistical, it's historical what he's putting together. There's no way around it. When I look at a strokes gain total standpoint, he's a stroke better than anybody else on tour for the most part over my 2-year running model. And Xander happens to be the closest to him there. And we could make the argument that either Xander is underachieving or maybe there is this lack of win equity that's coming into play. But, you know, I'm going back to Xander this week. I talked about it on Links and Locks. I thought 12-1. Some people got it at 13-1 was a good number. It's just, at the end of the day, it just comes down to what kind of contest that you're playing for DFS and really how aggressive you're going to get with these builds. And I think you and I are very similar in that mentality, and you're even more aggressive than I am with it, to where if you look at DFS in general, the rake is very high, and most people that are entering these contests, when you're min cashing over and over again, you end up being the rake. It's what we've talked about on this show numerous times. So you need to put yourself in the position to where when you hit big and it pays for all of these. Like, I would rather have a lower cash percentage than the people that are min cashing over and over again because we're playing these safe builds across the board. And I think that's kind of what gets lost in translation to the public, that people just want to say that they turn their $5 into $10. But over the course of time with the rake, you're going to end up losing all your money. So being aggressive like Nick is in general is the way to go. And I think based off contest selection, we can then deviate from how aggressive or how conservative we want to get from there, because there are contests that are going to be single entry, less people, that we don't need to be as different to be unique in those builds. But when we're talking millionaire makers or things of that nature, like, you have to get a little bit more extreme in those spots.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like I wasn't light Scotty, I was none. Just that one literal lineup happened to be good. So it's cool. Like again, too, like so many you need luck in this game, in this racket. But yeah, it's cool. Like certainly helped. I was on a 4-week cold run, so it's like, all right, something broke my way a little bit. Obviously, my main theory and player pool sucked there, but caught a lucky break. But let's get into the RBC Heritage player pool. I'm going to start you off 10K and above, which is a wide variance because Scotty's 13.3. I'm going to do it again. I will actually, this is actually a pretty cool comment by Zach Jeffers, sorry. The similar length clubs with a hindrance at Augusta with uneven lies. Maybe I would feel like he would address that. I think he did say he had different length on his longer irons, but his like 7 through P is this length of a standard 8 iron potentially. I don't know. I don't know what he's got going on. And yeah, he hit the ball extremely well Thursday. He hit the ball well all weekend, but it wasn't like lights out. His proximity was not fantastic. He was not Colin Morikawa with the iron play, but yeah, the short game concerns like you talked about pre-tournament, I think certainly showed up a little bit. But 10K and above, we got Morikawa, Cantlay, Ludwig, who's an absolute superstar, and he's going to win the Masters someday, especially with Scarborough on the bag like that. That combo is lethal. So that was, exactly kind of how I thought it would play out. I really wanted to bet him top 10. I just didn't see the numbers being as short as they were to open. Then we got Xander, Rory, and Scotty. Up top, I don't think Scotty's actually going to be 15 to 20% owned in that range. I think he'll be lower. I think everybody's kind of talking about the baby thing again, which certainly I guess could happen, but I don't want to talk about that at all. Again, great player. I don't think you need to pay his price. Like this is me, like I'm going to fade him again. It is what it is, but
let's just keep going down this route. I'll be right.
Yeah, at some point it'll be right. But also like, I feel like Roberto said it best on a course like this, where like you kind of take the driver out of most people's hands. Maybe there's a couple tighter holes that if you're an elite driver of the golf ball, like Scotty and like Ludwig, like you could probably separate yourself on those holes by ripping driver. As long as you know where it's going, like Fleetwood, he's hitting driver really well too right now. But other than that, it's like, I feel like Scotty needs like a full challenge, like a course, something where around the green matters a ton, which I do believe it does here. Very small greens, so iron play matters a lot here. But when you just take away the tee game, I feel like the well-roundedness, it's not even well-roundedness, the elite roundedness of Scotty Scheffler, like I don't see that at this course because it's more of like a second shot golf course with cleanup around the green and scrambling. So I think there's tons of guys in this, everybody in this price range is playable. If I were to lean one or two, I still think I'd lean Ludwig. I'm okay with Xander. I'm not playing Rory. I just think he's overpriced for what he's producing. It's just you're paying for the name value there. But Morikawa is probably going to be a guy I like. Otherwise, honestly, I think my up market single entry lineup is going to start with Fleetwood and none of the guys above it. It's no cut too. So I want guys that can show up and just finish top 15, which I think Tommy Fleetwood and above, all those guys certainly can, but I want guys with upside. And I feel like the 6K range, when you take a Scotty or a Scotty and Xander combo, it just kind of disappears again.
So I ran the numbers, and I think I've talked about this on the show before. I ran these numbers probably, I would say around the time that we probably started filming originally. So 2.5, 3 years ago. I think that's how long we've been going now.
Yeah, 2021, I think. This is season 3.
Yeah. And one of the things that I noticed, because the narrative in the space has always been, for better or worse, and I think it's for worse in this situation, that no cut tournaments allow you more freedom to get aggressive in these spots and double dip at the top and go down the $6,000 range. You're not going to have missed cut potential down there because everybody's going to play. I ran the numbers to see if that actually was factual. And it was about the exact opposite of what you would expect to happen from there. Like the lack of top 10 potential that you find down in that $6,000 range and how exact that you need to be with it, actually almost every single time in a no-cut tournament ends up putting you in this position where a flatter build ends up being better. Doesn't mean that you can't find $6,000 options, but I think when you start double dipping in the $6,000 range, you're taking a negative EV route from the extension of what that answer is. So I agree with you, Nick, for the most part, where I would rather be a little bit more balanced. I think even if that means that I'm not playing Scotty, I have higher ownership than you do.
I see 17. I just don't believe it.
I mean, I'm much, much higher at this point, and maybe I'm the one that's wrong with it, but
we got 25.
I have like 30.
There's just no way.
I don't think he's going to be 30 either. I would argue that he's going to be higher than 17 though. Like, I think he probably lands somewhere in like 25, 26%. I think there's enough people that are going to continue to go back to him. We'll see where that ends up going. And maybe I'm wrong on that answer there, but starting with Scotty is the same problem that we've been running into when we have these $6,000 builds over and over again. You get put into the same range. How many lineups, and it's going to be an exorbitant amount, are going to start with Scotty Scheffler and Lucas Glover? Like, it's going to happen so frequently on those builds. And I like Lucas Glover this week. He's one of my favorite values down beneath, but
you can have him.
Well, I mean,
how is he 15% owned? Like, well, obviously because
you've already given him to me on a bet that we made on Action Network where you took Justin Thomas, and you know, I am the one that's just going to fade Justin Thomas with the bottom of the board here with Lucas Glover, which I don't know if you saw this, Nick. I don't know if this was added after the fact or that matchup was already out in the space. Did you see that Glover versus Thomas is a real matchup that you can find at Bet Online?
No, I didn't.
It was minus 110 both way, ironically. With
it still is. What the hell? That is. I'll take JT.
I mean, and
I don't have a Bet Online account anymore. I don't think I still have Bovada, Pinnacle through a source, and then I can get Bet Chris action too, and then my offshore, but my offshore doesn't really give matchups.
I don't think there's any value in that number at minus 110. Like, it's a stay away spot for me. But I think the point that I was trying to make on Action, which now somehow has been
great
reduced,
handicap. Was it great handicap though?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good handicap with it, but that's kind of where my range for Justin Thomas was. And that's the point I was trying to make. So to me, it's 50-50 of who finishes better. You very well might end up being correct with this call here, but whatever it's worth, my model did like Glover ever so slightly more. And just some of the long-term data with Thomas still continues to be troublesome. But I think for me, it's probably Xander and Oberg that are my two favorite. I think from a contrarian standpoint, Morikawa makes a lot of sense. I always talk about how I run things from a weighted scoring perspective, which is just going to take all 18 holes and then merge it into each hole being played and then figure out who the best scorers are. The top 5 of that model is exactly what you would expect. Morikawa ended up being 5th there. So I don't see a reason why he would be that much below in ownership outside of the course history that Cantlay's bringing to the mix. I have a head-to-head matchup with Cantlay over Fitzpatrick. That was kind of where I tried to get my exposure there, but I don't know. I mean, I love Xander. I love Oberg. I think that to me is kind of where I'm trying to aggressively attack. And I think the Fleetwood answer that you talked about is kind of why I'm not even more aggressive up in this range, because to me, Fleetwood is arguably one of the best plays on the board. And I have no problem with anybody who wants to start a lineup with him. I also think that it's very easy to throw him with Oberg or Xander and build from there.
Yeah. All right. I would agree. I think with all the above. What was I looking for here? Okay. We'll get to Lucas Glover. Mid-tier, obviously we talked enough about Fleetwood. I think he would probably be a core play for all of us. Do you have any love for, we'll just go 9K and above? My favorite play on the board, I think in terms, probably my favorite play on the board as well as Zalatoris. We talked about it on Action Network. What's the ownership you have for him? I see 12.
I see 12.
Nice. I think that's just way too much up win equity for a guy that is one of the best iron players on tour to this day right now, like still post-injury. And my theory is that I think everybody, including sportsbooks, are kind of handicapping him as like the the bomber type of guy. When his driver has lost a ton of distance since coming back from the injury and kind of changing that swing. His short game has gotten better. The putting, I think, has kind of fixed itself a little bit with the broomstick lab golf putter there. And also, like, I think he's extremely hungry to win. Where Wyndham, I don't know, like, is this kind of just like a hangout spot? Obviously, everybody talks about this being a vacation spot. Jordan Spieth is kind of broken, probably has some leverage there for a track that he's had a lot of success with. Matt Fitzpatrick, I don't think is actually that good of a course fit. I know he won last year.
I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'm talking
and
like
he's
an
been
asshole,
great
but
here historically. It's not just one finish. And if a player starts talking about how much they love a course and they're producing results, like I'm going to, it means something to me. But I also don't know if his form is like, I bet him at the Masters. I had him in so many different iterations of bets and he came 22nd. I think he was fine, but we continue to run into the spot with Fitzpatrick where I don't know why he can't get his clubs right. Like his irons aren't calibrated on the short irons at the Masters. He's leaving a 4 grand.
Like, is he saying like there's like lie angle or loft or something's off, or just like his swing?
The loft, the calibration of the clubs were off on
It's
it.
like swing weights or something,
something
simple,
technical. That's something that you can easily switch coming into. That's a better answer for him than the swing is messed up. But I also think that when you look in, it didn't happen with Spieth on DraftKings with ownership, but I think if you look inside the betting market, maybe more so for that answer, Fitzpatrick and Spieth got a lot of respect of what they've done at this course with their victories. Yeah. I don't know how warranted it actually is. I understand your answer with Spieth that you kind of can create leverage by playing him because he is this boomer bust commodity that's going to be, I mean, I don't know what percentage you have, Nick, but like I have 10%.
8.
Yeah, 8. I mean, I think somewhere in that range is going to be where it ends up landing, but I don't know. For me, I hear all your answers with Zalatoris. I don't think he's the same driver of the ball after all the back problems that he's had. We've seen that reduction in distance, and inside of my model, he doesn't even grade the way that he used to anymore. But I'm kind of trying to either get up into this $10,000 range for a lot of those golfers I talked about. I want to play Tommy Fleetwood for all the reasons I mentioned, or I'm trying to fall into the $8,000 section. Like this range for me is not exactly where I want to be. I'm okay with Wyndham Clark, maybe more so than you are. I do think he has a high ceiling here.
Sure.
Maybe there's a boom or bust answer that comes into play for him, but at 12% is what I have it. I think it's worth a risk there, but really outside of those two names, I'm probably more or less out on everybody else.
Yeah, I think Zalatoris is going to be like my first click. Again, the short game numbers that he's produced since he's been injured are fantastic. Maybe that's probably what he was doing when he was injured, is just working on the short game, gaining confidence there. I don't know, but it's an elevated event. I think he's got that killer type of instinct, and I want multiple guys that I think have significant win equity, and getting Tommy Fleetwood and Wills out. And we could talk about Tommy Fleetwood's win equity. I guess there is none, but it's got to happen. And I know you've been talking about this course being like the perfect one for him. And he's also just playing extremely good golf right now. And I don't think he's one to like fit into like the vacation mode style that this tournament may offer a lot of these players. And he just literally one of the best scramblers on tour. Good putting, great on club down courses, everything about him. Just expected proximity, he's number 6 for me.
Here's the thing I want to say about Fleetwood, and I think Xander fits into this mix also. You see sports books, and it happens all the time, where they mask or they skew the odds, where they reduce them essentially in their favor. And it happens across the board. Like I always talk about how a true hold percentage, I mean, you should be at 100% if this was a fair board. Every single one of these hold percentages is just going to naturally be 140, 150, 160. You can get into the low 130s when you kind of mix and match some books here. And there's
many 160s this week.
There are some spots that are better than others. And if you price match, as I said, which is why it's important to have so many books, you can get that number down a little bit. But there are certain players, even more so than the norm of that answer. Xander, Fleetwood. Those are two names that were reduced on the board to begin with. And look at what's happened to both of those two names. In my opinion, sharp money has hit both of those two spots. and pushed them down even further. And, I'm very mathematical with my model, and I'm always going to trust my data. And I got there with Xander. I couldn't get there on the Tommy Fleetwood number. I wish this was a 30-1 price. I really think that, like, at some point, this lack of win equity or this lack of upside answer, it just becomes like fluff in the space. Like, if it drives ownership down, and it's not necessarily doing it for these two in this position, but if it can give me the potential to get them what I still believe is under owned, which is why I like them so much, this is kind of just that click all in spot. And I'm going to be super aggressive in the spot. And as you talked about, Nick, I talked about this in 2021 when he missed the cut. And I know that's not necessarily the great example to use here, but I think this is the perfect venue for him, that if he does end up winning on tour, or when he ends up winning, it's going to be a course like this. And I kind of think Harbor Town is that prime example of, if he wins this week, it's going to be unfortunate because my model loved him. I just couldn't get there at the 20-1 numbers that we're talking about. But I think for DFS, this is kind of that like central part of my build where I'm going to be locking around him quite a bit.
No doubt. All right. I love it. So yeah, those will be two guys I'm extremely heavy on, Wilsey and Fleetwood. Going to be a hard pass on Fitz, honestly, with Spieth, as much as like I want to talk myself into doing it with the ownership and no cut. I don't know. I think having one really, really bad round is still enough to kind of kill you on the placement side of points on the DFS game. So I'm out there. I don't really have a read on Wyndham. I think the price is fantastic. A lot of upside. Maybe I can go there because let's start with the 8Ks. This is where a ton of the ownership's coming from. In most weeks, I think it's usually in the 7s. So it's kind of interesting to see so much projected chalk to be in the 8K range. But we'll start with Thigala. I don't really have any thoughts. Are you in, out, indifferent? Do you think there's leverage there? Because all the ownership up in the upper 8Ks is going to Cameron Young. I would love to tell myself I'm playing Tony Finau. I just I'm more inclined to play Justin Thomas, and I know you'd probably be the opposite than I am to play Tony Fleetwood or Tony Finau. Tony Fleetwood would be great to get his distance off the tee with Fleetwood's everything else, but I don't know about Tony Finau. I see 6% ownership right next to Cameron Young, who's 20 plus. I see no reason not to play Cam Young.
Yeah.
Maybe the around the green play is kind of sketchy, but the iron play is so incredibly elite this season. I don't see him missing many greens.
I think your point of the ownership landing here, and maybe not so much on the bottom end of this range because there's still a way to get out of it, but that's probably where you're correct, that the ownership around Scheffler doesn't end up being as high as I'm projecting it. There's just too much ownership in this range for Scheffler to get to 30% like my numbers currently have it. There has to be something that's going to drop one way or the other with it. But I think with the Gala, I'm indifferent on the price. I think he's a good leverage play. He's one of the better leverage plays that I have. And ironically,
also, real quick, your number one leverage play last week, take a damn bow. I couldn't do it. I should have done it. Tom Kim. And my God, did he go nuts on Sunday. And he was you had to have him. And I don't really ever play Showdown. I think I played a very small Showdown slate because I was going to be on the golf course and wanted to get exposure to I forgot who I played on Sunday. I could find it irrelevant, but someone I didn't have in my actual player pool for the weekend. But that just real quick, that was awesome. I don't know what you saw in him, but it worked. And also, while we're talking about Cameron Young, Tommy Fleetwood's minus 165 in his matchup on FanDuel over Cameron Young.
That is a noticeable number there because Cameron
Young likes Cam Young.
Yeah, Cameron Young is not a player that is being faded in matchups. He's a sizable favorite, or at least in there with every single player. So the market's gone a little bit crazy here on Fleetwood, but it's understandable. So I think he's, like we've said, one of the better plays. But do you want to guess? And one of these options, Nick, is down in the $6,000 range, and the form is as bad as it can possibly be. So I want to preface it with that, but do you want to guess who the two best leverage plays I have on the board right now would be?
Seamus Power.
Where is Seamus? It's not Seamus.
Okay.
I'm indifferent.
Justin Rose.
Justin Rose would be one.
Okay.
And then the other one is a little bit further up the board. A name that is in this section here in the 8,000 site that might give it away.
Tony Finau.
So
I'll play Tony Finau over Cameron Young if you just tell me to do it.
I don't know if that's the right decision necessarily, but
I don't
I'll
want
tell
to
you
play
what.
20% on Cameron Young.
I know you're going to disagree because you just said it out loud, which it's funny because we didn't talk about this and you don't even know that I have this wager. So I have 2 head-to-heads this week. One of them was Patrick Cantlay over Matthew Fitzpatrick. We crushed that number
That's
over at
gone. Yeah,
Rotoballer. That number is
well
gone. I don't know if this number is still around. I have not checked.
I will pull it up.
Tony Finau over on DraftKings against Justin Thomas minus 110.
It is live.
Yeah, I like it.
That's a good play too. Bet Chris minus 119 in favor of Finau, minus 122 Pinnacle Finau. Are we doing an in-pod play?
I mean, I like it, Nick.
You already have it, right?
Yeah.
All right, fuck it. Tony Finau.
It's another way to lose money.
If there's any week to get right, it's got to be the smaller greens and let your PGA Tour top 5 ball striking right now take over, right?
I'll give you the one negative that would be the biggest drawback, which is a problem because I'm always trying to find how somebody putts on comp courses and versus their baseline. Tony Finau is projected dead last in putting for this tournament.
I have him 35th.
That's. I mean, if that ends up being the case, I think he beats Justin Thomas.
Okay, I'm making this bet as we speak. Fuck. All right, I'm off JT. Can you play Tony Finau? Is it worth it to really because Shane Lowry is going to have a ton of ownership at 85. Tony Finau sitting there with no one interested, which is also kind of same situation for Thigala. JT, you're a hard pass. We don't need to talk about him. I still believe in it, but there's another guy that people think is broken that I think I like a ton, and I think he will be in this lineup with
Sam Burns,
Fleetwood, no, not in the AK range. You know who it is. It's later.
Okay. Yes, to answer your question.
Yeah, he can be there, right?
I think so. I think that this narrative around Finau has gone a little too extreme. The putter still has massive question marks. I do think the ball striking sets up very well for this tournament. I really don't see that big of a difference between
what it's
him.
Worth, Tony Finau did putt really well in Florida on the Bermuda. So, I don't know.
I don't know if I I'm giving this answer saying I don't know if I necessarily trust the putter to not be horrible, but I think if it's not horrible and for 4 days, at some point, my guess would be that he spikes and he puts together one of the best rounds of the day, and you're going to need more than that. But I don't see why he couldn't put together a top 20 finish at no ownership.
I think I'm going to be in.
It's not that hard of a sell with you, Nick, to get you onto Tony Finau, but
no, it's not. I was not expecting this. All right, let me take this bet for Tony Finau. We're in. You said full unit guaranteed, or my money back. Thank you.
I mean, I owe you so much on some of these things already. We'll add it to the.
You told me to play Tom Kim last week, and I didn't. So, what comes around goes around. All right, Shane Lowry, great form. My one and done play with. The Action Network one with the large field one that I do with Sia, we're going with Will Zalatoris. So I like to see Sia's an incredibly sharp guy too. Love to see that he was all about Will. Again, I just think the market I don't know. I think they got a bad read on Will, and I think it's a great course for him. So I'm in on Will. Probably going to be out on Justin Thomas now if you're going to make me choose Finau or Thomas, the two guys. For some reason, I just can't seem to quit. Thoughts on Corey Connors, Sam Burns, Henley, and Siwoo? Again, with Russell, the guy found a putter over the past, 14 months. It's got to be one of the best courses in the world for him. Probably just an auto play at 8,100, especially, dude. He's getting close to Fleetwood love in the market here. Massive favorite over Sam Burns. Very sizable, not massive, but favorite over Wyndham Clark at 9,200. Big favorite over Shane Lowry, more expensive. Not necessarily a big favorite over Siwoo.
Yeah, I think Siwoo and Henley are the two sharp plays down in this bottom section. That's kind of how my model had each one of them as top 10 projected win equity candidates in this lower $8,000 range.
Keep going. My headphones died again real quick. I'll fix it.
No, I was just saying, like, just for everybody out there, like, if you look at my model, and I'll talk about Connors too, like, Henley, when he opened at 55-1, that was arguably the best value that I had on the board. And Siwoo delivered this very similar answer that I got with Finau, to where I ended up not betting him in the outright market just because of this negative return that he had with the putter. But I think those are two sharp plays. Like at 14, 15% ownership, I'd actually make an argument that they're not too highly owned. Siwoo at the 16% number is flat even for me of what he should be. Henley at 15% still has a little bit of positive leverage that you can get in that spot. So I like those two. And I think for Connors at this 10.5, 11% ownership, I think it's a noteworthy return that we've gotten with him. Like Henley is being steamed out against every single person in the space substantially on that number. And you look at him against Connors, and it's not the biggest move of that. Like he's a slight favorite over Connors. And even with Connors, he was top 10 in my model from an overall rank. He was inside the top 20, so he had a little bit of a negative downturn for upside, which would make sense. He's only ever won at the Valero. I don't necessarily expect Corey Connors to come out and win. If he does, that's just a feather in the cap for this situation. But I think for safety markets, he ended up being a top 15 play for me. So I thought for the price, you get this really strong group down here with Connors, Henley, and Siwoo. And then the answer just becomes what to do with Sahith, what to do with Finau, and what to do with Cameron Young, because I could make an argument for all three of those also. And now all of a sudden we have 6 players in this range. And that's kind of why the $9,000 section for me just became a pass.
Interesting. Okay. Let's go. If you had to choose one, Russ or Siwoo, choose one.
I will go Russ. I mean, that's what I went. I know the prices were a little bit different in the outright market, so I don't want to make the direct comparison there. I think when I put the ticket in on Henley, he was 55-1. Siwoo was more in that 40, 45-1 range. So I took the better price. But even if they both would have been 55, I would have taken it on Henley if I only could have had one ticket.
All right. Let me let's start a lineup here and we'll see where we get. I'm going to go with Tommy Fleetwood, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau, Russell Henley. Nice. This may work. All right. We'll wait till my guy. I think let me put him in as a staple so we can see what I can afford. Okay. I like this. Now I know there's one guy you're going to choose, I think, but let's go to sevens. Ben on, shout out, top 20 at the Masters. That was my heaviest ticket, so that helped. I really wish he would have gotten the top 10, though. That would have been huge. Thoughts at the bottom. Pavone getting a lot of ownership. Pavone, whatever. Taylor Moore, I think, is just a really, really good player right now, and he found his swing again, which is great, coming off a win last year at the Valspar. Then he kind of disappeared a little bit. Club down Cam Davis, which I believe we've been talking about for 3 years. Tom Kim, probably underpriced. I don't know if I trust his short game enough. And JT Poston, I like a ton. I think his game's rounding back into form. Bez, Kirk, like all these guys are legit. Brian Harmon, great course fit. Denny McCarthy, probably going to be a pass for me. Ben on, Jason Day, like, all right, what do you see in the 7K range here? Because I'll just give you who I like. I know we like Keegan. Mm-hmm. Oh, my headphones died again. Can you hear like yourself talking when you talk?
No.
Oh, so it's perfect. I don't even need headphones this whole time. Can you hear me now still?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Damn, that's great. All right. I never needed headphones this whole time. I thought there'd be like crazy feedback from my microphone picking up what you're saying, but technology. All right. Headphones are gone. I like Bez and Chris Kirk. And the market loves Akshay.
Yeah. So I'm going to make an argument here, and this is the potential spot where Egg ends up on my face here. He's the most bet person in the space that I have seen. The ownership doesn't necessarily tell the same story, which is an interesting answer. I know he opened very high in the market at like the 100-1s and got more bet down. So like take that with a grain of salt with this, but I would make an argument that Tom Kim is not necessarily underpriced at this total. I don't love him. I think you get a spot here where everybody saw what he provided on Sunday at the Masters. And that's why he was the first click for everybody. You think of a course like this, and yes, you would expect this venue to be great for him, but maybe this is me running my numbers from too long term of a duration. I didn't love him inside of my model. I like, if I'm directly comparing, I would rather play Keegan Bradley. I would rather play JT Poston. I'd rather play Chris Kirk. I'd rather play Brian Harmon. Like, I think there's similar ownership or even less ownership in some of these options where we're getting a better player that is just ideally suited for this course as Tom Kim would be, but actually maybe in better form. I talked about, like, we saw Tesori write the mental health coach and they brought in. Maybe it worked with Tom Kim, and maybe this is where the turnaround ends up happening now. But I don't know if one round is going to necessarily be what gets me back fully into him. Like, when there's a leverage in the situation, as there was with the Masters, there's a different conversation to be had at that point. I still don't know, and you can tell me what ownership you see right now on Tom Kim, Nick, but I would need. I see like 10, 11. Like, I would need this to be 2% if I really wanted to take a swing at this. Like, I just think he's too popular for what we're getting here. I think Harmon's a really good play, though, Nick. I know I'm not going to convince you on that one. I think Chris Kirk is a very intriguing option. In the 2 pick one and done contests that I've put together, like, I've made a mess of it to where I've used Henley and Siwoo and all those names at the bottom. Kirk is probably the name I'm going to use as my second pick, if that kind of just gives an indicator of I like him in various iterations of the market. It's been hard for me to find out exactly betting wise where I want to back him because I didn't see anything that made sense. But for DFS or for answers like that, I think there is a safety built in and maybe a little bit higher of a ceiling than the market let out early in the week. And he's kind of hovered around in a lot of these books in that like 60, 70 to 1 range, which is a intriguing number for a golfer that I don't think people necessarily think of to have win equity.
So if you had to choose one, Kirk, Poston, I don't think I trust. I mean, Bez has got solid course history, like he's safe, but Kirk, Bez. I mean, Akshay. I don't think I'm very interested in Akshay. Are you?
No, I'm probably out on Akshay.
All right, Kirk, Bez, or Poston. Because I'm going to be out, dude. Cam Davis is 15% ownership. The market absolutely hates him. That is very interesting.
Yeah, my model liked him. When I put in some of I essentially put in a very small percentage of what the sharp markets are doing and who a person is favored or underdog against to kind of move some of those numbers. And Davis was one of the big shifters in the wrong direction for me when I entered that, just because a lot of these names that he is going up against, I didn't necessarily have like rave reviews on them inside of my model to begin with. So it just was, he was a natural name that got pushed back because of that reason. I think from an upside answer, it probably is JT Poston over Kirk, but I trust Chris Kirk a little bit more. I love what he provided at the Masters. That was a player that I backed there too, and I thought he was steady across the board for the most part for 4 days. I think you now get a better course for him here in technicality sense of the word there, to where you would expect him to be able to find success at this course. And he's been a little bit hit and miss over the last couple years, but he does have that 7th in 2021, and he's bringing quality form into the mix, albeit maybe not that upside. So I don't know, Nick. I mean, that's a long-winded answer to say. I think if somebody was to spike to win it, it's probably more likely Poston, but if somebody was going to come 11th place and that was where we're going to land, I would think it's Kirk.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, that's what I have room for. Anybody else in the 7K range you love? Like Brendan Todd getting decent ownership.
I like
Todd.
I always like Todd at these courses. I mean, you could make the argument that there's really no upside there, and if that's the answer, then I'm fine not playing him. But no, not really. I mean, my model liked Todd. My model liked Hoagie a little bit. That's essentially the extent of the names that graded as a value. You talked about Bizade and how I don't know what the upside is there either, but
that's the issue. So like Poston, and I mean, I kind of like Harris English a little bit too.
I'm fine with him. I don't have a problem playing English.
Kirk or Poston both grade so well for me. I think English is probably going to be the odd man out. All right. Well, let's go the 6K range because my low own play of the week for me, and I don't think I would definitely like write him up if I was riding this week. Going with
I don't
Ricky
have a problem
Fowler.
with him either. Yeah, I don't have a problem with Fowler. I think the ownership is too low for a golfer. Like, there's very few names for me in this $6,000 section that actually experienced an upside answer when I ran this. And I think for a $6,000 golfer, you should be swinging for the fence a little bit more if you're down in that range. Like, you don't want that safety mix. Like, you're going to need somebody that if they end up hitting, they end up potentially landing in the top 10. He would be one. Justin Rose would be the other. I know the form around Rose might just be too bad. And there's a matchup out there, Fowler versus Rose. And I saw Fowler as a very slight favorite. I would have it flipped, but I think it's very similar to options that give you that upside at this course. Outside of that, it's difficult. Nick Taylor, maybe. Like, I'm fine playing Nick Taylor for upside.
Definitely.
I don't know if there's any other name, though, that I'm super bullish on. Like, I get caught into this Adam Hadwin train quite a bit to where
me too,
and it never really works. Eric Cole, my model liked, but Cole has been on a downturn recently. He's had a couple performances that have popped for him, but even still, I mean, there's really been nothing inside the top 20 in like 5 or 6 events.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else down low? Super low, Seamus, Rogers, your boy, Webb, Thomas Dietrich in decent form, getting some ownership, Svensson, any of those guys, or are you trying to just kind of clear the way out of the 6K range to kind of get different?
I kind of like, and I'm not giving this answer as somebody that I am like really pushing out there as a name that I want tons of exposure to, but of all the super cheap options that we're talking about, I kind of liked Bryce Garnett.
Okay.
I think you get very limited ownership. If we're talking about leverage, he was one of the better leverage plays. And if you're just talking about price difference of what somebody should have been priced, he was one of the names for me that was inside the top 10 that should have been higher up on the board. And maybe that's the limited data I'm pulling from. He does have a victory. It's going to skew the numbers a little bit in his favor, but I think he is one of those options that can put together something at a cheap price. But once again, like I'm not eagerly trying to put him into builds.
All right. Here's my single entry lineup then. Tommy Fleetwood, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau, Russell Henley, Ricky Fowler. And it is going to keep me up at night debating Christian Kirk, slot wide receiver. I could use a slot wide receiver right now. 6-yard touchdown and the yardage bonus would be fantastic. Him or put Chris Kirk or Poston. And that's going to be tough. Let me check like my actual model to see who graded heavier. Do you have any lean at all? Like I know your answer was like perfect answer, the perfect political answer, but not what I wanted to hear.
I think it's truly 50-50.
I have Chris Kirk. Okay. I mean, maybe I just trust my stuff here. 6 spots ahead of JT Poston.
I have JT Poston 6 spots ahead of Chris Kirk, but when I ran it for safety, for whatever that's worth, it liked Kirk a little bit more. And that was on the back end of the equation of how I ran it. The initial output of it had Poston, I believe, in all 3 marks ahead. And then as I've added some of this back end stuff, Kirk has continued to climb for me. And that's just it's a sharp movement pushing him in the right direction. Like he was a favorite against like Lucas Glover, while it's not a big number, that was a big one for me. Like I know it's like a weird golfer to give, but my model really liked Lucas Glover. Favorite against Day, that didn't push it quite as much. The favorite against Cameron Davis, I think you can make an argument that the market is just so low on Davis that maybe my model was off. So how far it's pushing him in that direction might not necessarily be as impactful as it looks inside of my sheet. Underdog to Corey Connors. My model loves Connors. No problem there. Underdog. Yeah. Underdog to English at Bet Chris. Favorite against English at Pinnacle. So 2 sharp locations that couldn't decide. English is one of those names that I think is fine for the price. So I was very encouraged by those returns. And I would think that from a course standpoint, this is about as good as you're going to get for him and Poston. Like Poston is one of those prime examples. and we've talked about it on previous shows, and I think we've talked about it, and Roberto always mentions it on Links and Locks also. Now that you have these elevated events that come into play, there's a lot of golfers that are forced to play in these contests that didn't normally do it. And you look at Poston and Kirk, like this is a venue that they've always come to. It fits their eye. It's the club down nature. Like this is the perfect venue for them. And Poston has demonstrated, at least recently, some more upside, I guess. But I also wonder where Poston's game is. Like, I don't think he's necessarily the golfer that we had to begin the season and to end last year. We haven't gotten a top 25 finish for him in 4 tournaments. The Genesis 10th place finish is really interesting because that's also not a course that I would have thought would have been perfect for his game. So I don't know where we're at with Poston. I guess that's where my reserve nature came into play ever so slightly here.
Yeah, and I think ownership will be a little heavier on Kirk. But like looking at the last, like here, if I filter like the club down courses, this is last year, August, but Wyndham Championship, Poston finishes T7, go up to this year, Sony Open, 6th, American Express, T11, and he's got multiple top 10 finishes at this venue in the past. Cut or he top 10s pretty much is what happens, or top 8s. T8's his worst finish when he's made the cut since 2018, I believe. So
let me ask you a question about that, because it goes to the question or the stance I was just talking about. So he's a golfer that was very course specific of events that he wanted to play in. And he's now a name that randomly gets thrusted into some like the API. Like, I don't think that's a tournament that he necessarily, if it's not an elevated event, that like he would want to necessarily be at.
All right, his game can't play there.
No. Do you think that helps or hurts him specifically for when he comes back to a course now that should better suit his game? Because he has been all over the map playing courses that are not. I don't know what the answer is to that. I think it's each person that probably gives a different answer, to where, like, for me, if I was a basketball player and you only told me that I could shoot underneath the basket, and then I decided to then start shooting threes, which is really my specialty. Like, I don't know if all of a sudden I don't make as many 3-pointers that week because I haven't been doing it. And a lot of those parts of his game haven't been firing because that's not what we're asked for at the Masters and at the API and all those venues. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe he just spikes and that's what he returns.
It's a good question, because you figured the players would be a really good spot for him with the iron player that he has become and the shorter like fairway demands of the Players Championship, and he comes after API and makes a cut, struggles a little bit, only T45. I remember watching him too. I think we were interested in him that week. And
I liked him. Yeah, I liked him at that event for all the natural reasons.
So maybe, but I do like that it's T30 at Augusta is a very good finish for him. So the ball striking outside of the first round was very good. So I think I'll buy into JT Poston, and that will be – I'll run the lineup twice. I'll do it once with Kirk, once with Poston, and hopefully one of them goes. I mean, obviously, like – I think I might as well just go for upside because I already have fucking Tony Finau in there anyway. So it's like, if he sucks, the lineup's going to suck because it's a no-cut event. I don't think like you could have a bad golfer and cash well this week. Like, you need to have 6 guys probably inside the top 25, obviously multiple inside the top 5. So that's how I look at it. If Finau just shits the bed anyway, like, okay, whatever, I might as well take the upside and the better putter of JT Poston for that upside. So yeah, there we go.
I think that's fair.
Rock on. Ricky Fowler, yeah. I just love the ball striking I saw from him at Augusta. It was kind of like a stress-free T30. I don't think he really ever blew up. I just think he's slowly getting a little bit better. And again, it's just 2% guy that I think could play well here. I don't know. That's, he's probably relaxing with the boys. I think, I'm sure him, JT, all those guys are probably having some cocktails. And I don't know. I think he plays better in the less stress and no expectation type of atmosphere. He got back to Augusta, which he hasn't played in a couple of years. So I don't know. Maybe he's just like, all right, I'm back in the clique of golf, and the public doesn't talk about him and doesn't care for him. So I'll take a 2% Ricky at 6,800 and call it a day.
Sometimes you just need something, and you talked about it in the Million Maker contest that, like, you didn't necessarily get things right, but you got it right in one situation. Like, even if you look at it for Ricky here, he shouldn't have made that cut. And Thomas and Wyndham and all those people blowing up got him into the weekend. And he played quality golf once he got there, and
Yes, he
maybe
did.
something flipped for him. And that's the difference where like you could make the argument that something flipped for Tom Kim also, but I think you're paying the ownership to kind of find out. With Ricky here, there's no ownership to talk about, and there's an argument to be made that at his very best, Ricky is probably still a top 20 player in this field. I mean, maybe
At his best,
at his best, like maybe higher than that. Like at points or parts of last year, my model was thinking he was a top 15 player at some of these big events, and the metrics have gone south. But like, you don't have to look any further inside of my sheet. All the upside numbers love his potential. The downside is clearly rooted in and built into where we have problems. But that is the kind of golfer that I want in a no-cut contest. If I'm going to take a cheap option, give me that flyer that can actually hit. So I like Ricky Fowler play. I don't know where it's going to land. I never get Ricky right, but I do think from an upside standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. Anything else that you want to talk about? Any other players? Any favorite play on the board? Anything before we let everybody get out of here?
No, let's just do our recap. So 10K and above, your core play, we'll call it that. I hate that fucking term, but core play, 10K and above.
Xander. I think Oberg's great too, but Xander.
I'll go Xander as well. 9K and above.
Fleetwood.
Will Zalatoris, 8K and above.
I mean, I have a sickness with Tony Finau, but I'll say Russell Henley.
Fuck, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be Russ for me too, but I'm not gonna endorse Tony Finau. I'm just gonna play him in my lineup, and because it's different, and I do believe he has upside, but I really do like Shane Lowry. More of a cash game for me, but he is my one and done play, so I will give him a shout.
Do you think Shane Lowry is substantially better as a 2-pick one and done contest play than Chris Kirk, or I guess Chris Kirk?
No, I think Shane Lowry is going to be super popular in one and done.
I guess it depends on if you're front running the contest or not.
Yeah. If you're playing for safety, which I am in our action one, Shane Lowry.
Sense,
that's the only reason I didn't play Willsy. Is like, all right, if this does blow up in my face, I don't see Lowry finishing outside the top 25, so I'll just take the money and run and try to stick around the top 3. 7K and above.
I'll go with Chris Kirk. I do think, though, from a betting standpoint, I would go Keegan. I just like the ceiling that Keegan possesses here.
Okay, I like that. I'll go JT Poston then. I can't give honorable mention to BH, but yeah, I do like the lefty a little bit. 6K. I'm going to start. It's Ricky Fowler for me.
I'll say Justin Rose. I'll take my shot with Rose and hope that he turns it around at a course that I think this is one of those ideal setups for him, and hopefully at some point he gets his game back.
Rock on. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for hopping in and contributing in the chat. Not a lot of questions this week. I think maybe everybody's kind of tired out from Augusta to take the week off. I will not be playing MME this week. I think looking at let me pull up my ledger. No cut events have been terrible for me. Again, the only reason I was like looking at my margins here, let me pull it up. The Amex was a no-cut event, right?
Yes.
Okay, crushed the Amex, but again, it was one lineup because it was the one lineup I hand-built with Nick Dunlap. So that worked out. Actually, my player pool was actually pretty good that week. I was very high on JT. Again, story of my year. The Farmers, that was not a elevated event, correct?
Maybe the American Express. I guess it wasn't, because, I mean, why would Dunlap have been in?
Oh, no, it's just a 3-day cut. You're right.
Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking. I was like, why?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, it's the split course rotation there. That's what.
All right. Then confirmed. I fucking have sucked this year in elevated events. So I'm going to not push the luck. I'm going to wait, save the bankroll that we just enhanced dearly for a tournament where I feel like there is some sort of a more of an edge for me. But I do think it would, like, cutting out guys like, I'm not telling you guys to do this, but cutting out guys like Cam Davis, if his ownership's going to be that high and the market doesn't like him and my numbers don't love him, but like Fitzpatrick, taking him out, and then finding like you got to take a stand on someone, probably like a Finau, maybe a JT. Again, we probably don't like it. Probably Sam Burns. I don't know. Ricky Fowler, like again, and who do you have as your top? Like Justin Rose? I don't know if I could do that one. Like Ricky, at least like is good around the green, good putter. His iron play is getting better, and he's gaining strokes approach. Like he's gaining strokes in multiple facets of the game, so I do like that. Maybe like a Harris English as a guy, like a ride or die. Like there's going to be someone that's like in the 2 to 5% range. Like maybe like fucking Rory. Maybe like, do you think that's a positive EV MME play? I just think his game's shit currently.
I would like, probably. What ownership percentage do you have on him?
8 flat. Like that's got to start to intrigue some sort of player that's like, hey, I'm playing for first place or nothing. I think you could finally say Rory McIlroy checks that mold of leverage. That's pretty wild to think about.
At 8%, yeah, I mean, an argument could be made for leverage there. I do think he loses one of his strengths with his long iron play. Like I would rather be, and his driver, obviously, like I'd rather him be able to hit the driver and hit from 200 plus yards, but
driver sucked though at Augusta, didn't it? He was
his whole game
not really in good position ever.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, at 8% ownership, I mean, that's the kind of leverage that we're talking about that can separate you at a no-cut tournament to where it's hard. Like, I can like Rory less than I like Xander, Oberg, Cantlay, maybe even Fleetwood, which is kind of a wild statement to say. But, I mean, at some point, leverage becomes very enticing.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you go, buddy. Appreciate your time. Yeah. Check out Underdog, promo code BGP. I believe there's still that new tournament they just launched that is only like 35% full. So check out the like season long drafts. Obviously the showdown weekend slates are something we've been very vocal against, but the scramble returns, I believe. No, there's actually still a decent layover. It locks tomorrow. So hop in there, $10 buy-in. So I will definitely do a couple drafts for that. But other than that, I'm out of here, Spencer. Appreciate your time. Appreciate the audience. Thank you guys for the support. And I will actually download this audio and put it up on the pod thing that I put. I forgot to do the Masters one on there and got a ton of DMs, but whatever. It's on YouTube still forever. So check out Win Daily. And again, we didn't even ask permission to go live. So thanks, Jason, for not knowingly allowing us to do this. But good turnout as always. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.